Welcome in, everyone, to a very special episode of the Barely Educated podcast by fans for fans on this momentous day in our great nation's history, the inauguration of a new Bears head coach.
That's right, my friend.
One we actually pretty much all wanted. I saw a poll a day ago, and it was like 93% wanted Ben Johnson.
Yeah.
So I'll ask, as always, one of my favorite times asking this in this history, the history of this pod. Chris, how are you?
Wow. Wow. I am thrilled, ecstatic, excited, not shocked, but since it's finally official, I guess I've allowed myself to be very excited. Me and my 17-year-old already danced around the living room together, hugging, and we did it, so it's doing good. All that to say,
Yeah, I
doing
thought you
good.
might be. What a fun day. Man, I was just cracking up. Well, I mean, it's fun that it's a holiday too. So I didn't have to feel bad being on Twitter way more than I should have been. And I got some work done this morning, and then I started refreshing Twitter way too much once people were like, "There's a plane flying in from Pontiac, Michigan on a private jet. It was the one that came from Dallas last week to Chicago." And everyone's like, "That's Ben Johnson." Then, of course, the Bears fan in me was like, "Watch it be Aaron Glenn that gets off the plane." And then I was like, "Okay, but come on, these private jets get rented out. They could like make the rounds. They probably have circuit. There's like 100 reasons to be skeptical." And I still have no idea if he was actually on that plane.
Right,
But
right.
it was really funny watching Bears Twitter just go ballistic at the possibility. And then like an hour and a half later, you get the Tom Pelissero tweet with, "I had fired up the score for like 5 minutes,
Hmm.
and cousin Nate's driving back
Cousin
from
Nate.
a weekend of hockey." And I was like, I'll call him when the score's in the second half of the hour where they take like the five commercial breaks and 1 minute of content, from like
Yes.
2:40 to 3.
Right.
And then they get the breaking news. And I was like, oh my gosh. After all the crazy, funny stuff going on Bears Twitter, we did it. It's just like hilarious to me on a entertainment level. But what's remarkable about this is they have done the obvious thing
Mm.
2 off seasons in a row. Now they could have just done it last year, and that would be even better. But they didn't screw around and get cute with the number one pick. I know Jane Daniels has been amazing, but everybody in the
Yeah.
world picks Caleb Williams. And let's not rewrite history here. There were all the rumors about Washington trying to trade up for him. They didn't in a million years think Daniels was going to do this as a rookie. No
Right.
one did.
Right.
Shout out to him. He's been great.
He
No
has.
no
Yeah.
shade intended. But the Bears part of this is they've now paired the really awesome system designer, play caller, head coach with Caleb Williams' career. If it all works, hopefully they're both here, making us extraordinarily happy for the first time in forever as Bears fans for a long time. This is a day for hope.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. We can
And I
worry about
usually
it.
crap all over our attempts to have hope, or I regret them later.
Yes. And there's plenty of time later to see if, it doesn't work out and be upset and frustrated again later. But I can't remember a time where I was so excited to get a coach, a particular coach. Is this the best on paper head coach hiring of our lifetime for the Bears?
Yes, I mean, how long had Lovey proven it as a DC?
He
A
he
year or
came from the
two?
Rams. I think it was
He was definitely well regarded.
three years at the
I
Rams.
think it's a fairly decent comp, except for the logic here with pairing it with Caleb is a little different.
Yep.
At minimum, since Lovey, and you could say it's a more exciting one than Lovey for sure. Because Lovey wasn't like exciting; it just ended up a pretty solid hire.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I would
Absolutely.
also argue Lovey's part of why I don't want a DC. He
Yes.
never did get the OC right,
Right. Yep. Yep.
and and now we already have a great rumor about who Johnson wants to bring in as the DC.
Yeah.
See
Dennis
that?
Allen. Yeah.
Hmm.
The rumors about that. How do you feel? You like that? Dennis Allen as a DC?
He's perfect. He was a really good DC who flamed out as a head coach. He's his
Hmm.
Vic Fangio. and he won't go chasing head coaching jobs because no one's going to want to give him one.
Okay. All right.
And he's a experience. To me, that's wise from Ben Johnson, right? Acknowledging where he might need the most help is definitely
Ah,
the D side. Of course, that's
right.
obvious. But also getting a veteran, maybe that helps him if he needs the disciplinarian. They're saying too, I'm seeing in the tweets like Ben Johnson ain't going to take your bull crap. Like, don't worry about that. He's not this little pushover offense guy, which I think we talked about it a few weeks back, was the case based on how he talked and how fired up he is on the sideline. Do you think if we did Hard Knocks, he'd swear, Chris?
Well, it'd get bleeped out if they did, I guess. But
But it's a mark of intelligence and humility to recognize I'm young and inexperienced,
yeah,
and the next most important person I bring in should be sort of opposite strengths, I guess you could say. So
sure.
I like that idea. I've also heard, I saw a tweet, I should say, about Lou Anarumo, who had ran the Bengals defense really well for a number of years until lately, which you
Yeah,
could talk
yeah.
about whether that's a talent thing. Anyway, so it's like even that's good news, like because now the next thing is like the rest of the staff. Go ahead and bring in Hank Fraley, the guy who ran the Lions O line. Let's get that one done. Make him OC if you have to, but he's going to work with the O line when Ben Johnson's really the OC.
Yeah.
That's right. The next order of business is DC and fixing the O line.
Mm, right.
That's what I'm doing if I'm Ben Johnson. I'm getting to work on that like ASAP. But man, the huge thing is Caleb gets the guy he wanted.
Yes.
And I think we should still be wise about it if we can. And I'm not even sure that this is possible as a fan. Let's see how it looks in September, right? Let's try not to get out ahead of our skis again. But man, it's exciting. They got Caleb a good play caller that Caleb was clearly jonesing for on the St. Brown podcast. And can we, without going too far, give the Bears a little credit?
Yes. Yes.
We hated the wide net because it got kind of comical.
It
They
was.
were just stalling and
Yes. Exactly.
doing fact finding. They had this thing locked in. They actually, in their own sort of weird Bears way, did what I wanted, where I said, no, have crystal clear vision, laser focus, be aggressive at the guy you want. They did all that the second it was available. They went and jumped on hiring this guy before he even got here.
Yep.
This was off of Zoom and whatever else they'd already talked about.
Yeah, I was going to ask. They haven't met with him in person, have they?
No, this now is signing
Yeah.
it. I mean, it's done. No
So
one's
they.
saying like that's unanimous. It's done.
So
So
they clearly
when's the
wanted
press
him.
conference? Let's go.
They clearly wanted him from day one.
And
That's
the other
yeah.
thing I love about it, sorry, but yeah, so that's what I'm trying to get. Like, let's give them some love for that because
Hmm.
we've questioned the process. They've always, we all know they've earned all the cynicism, but this was aggressive. And I love that
Sure
because they're
was.
usually so mom and pop, small time about
Yeah.
everything.
And
And
so
they must be paying him a pretty penny for him to not even
the
hear Tom Brady out.
cheap Bears. Yeah. Hmm. I really like that they prioritized Caleb. They said he is the guy. He's the most important player on the roster. We have to build around him for long-term success and see if, in fact, he is the guy that you can. I mean, I think he clearly is. We saw enough from him last year with a bad coaching staff, with bad protection. Some of the great stuff that he did. Still has a lot of work. Has a lot of work to be done. But the franchise acknowledged that setting him up for success is the most important thing. And that makes me so
His
happy.
dad's over there retweeting stuff and saying coaching matters. I mean, the
Right.
Williamses should be thrilled.
Yes.
Adam Schefter tweet just to like we talked a lot about the other candidates last episode because I was kind of like trying to figure out where this was going. And I'm so glad I don't have to try to talk myself into Mike McCarthy anymore. I mean,
Yes.
legitimately was my fourth, but a very distant fourth to, like I
Uh-huh.
said, Ben Johnson, then a huge gap, and we got Ben Johnson. Schefter's tweet. In 3 seasons with Ben Johnson as the Lions OC, Detroit ranked top five in scoring all 3 years, fifth in 22 and 23, first in 24 at 33.2 points per game. Can you imagine what this podcast will be like if they're dropping 33 points a game for an entire season?
Oh boy. Oh
The
boy.
Lions led the NFL in scoring this season for the first time since 1954. Okay, so if he pulls that off with the Bears, we're going to get another one of these since 3 decades before either of us were born kind of stats. You
Yes,
know,
yes.
only the 49ers had more 20-yard plays over the last 3 seasons than the Lions. 240 for the Niners, 230 for the Lions. How do you score in this league? Explosive plays.
Yep, yep.
No, very rare, in all honesty, are the 15 play drives that the Bears have always seemingly been trying to do forever. You got to have explosives too.
Hmm.
The Lions 28.2 offensive points per game from 22 to 24 were most in the NFL. And I'm
Whew.
telling you from his press conferences, the clips I've seen, granted it's not a huge sample, and I'm telling you with Dan Campbell in charge of that thing up there, that he's not going to be a dweeby Mark Trestman.
Right, right. Yeah, he will not. He seems.
So this guy's going to be great. I'm pretty convinced. He's too smart. That's the other thing I love. They finally hired someone smart.
Yes,
Like
league-wide
legitimately
acknowledged
smart.
is
He's
smart.
going to
Yeah.
get up there and he might do a bunch of coaching cliches because that's just kind of what they do. But it's not going to look like he's speaking English for the second time in his life.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. League-wide acknowledged that he's one of the best at what he does, and really, really smart. Not like looking for the person that no one's thinking of, like a Trustman, or maybe even like an Eberflus in the past. So yes, yes. Oh, and I'm so encouraged too that Johnson wanted to come to the Bears. I mean, on his end too. It's not like
Yeah, that's another part of
you
only the
know.
one interview and no face
Mm-hmm.
to face. He didn't need a face to face either.
Right. That's so encouraging, and maybe that's why he didn't take a job last year. Maybe because he wanted to come to work with Caleb Williams. I don't know. I'm just speculating on that, but
We talked about their connection through the QB collective,
mm-hmm.
which is interesting because they're both a part of it. A lot of coaches and young QBs are like
Mm-hmm.
practically the whole league's worth of under 25 QBs.
Mm-hmm.
But then he changed his agent out of the guy who started the QB collective to this Rick Smith, who's based out of Chicago, which is kind
Oh,
of juicy. But at the same time, shout out to that guy for stirring up all the smoke with the Raiders, getting his client the best
yeah.
deal, I'm sure.
Yeah, can we talk about that for a second? It really seemed like the media was trying to sell us on Johnson going to the Raiders, and Tom Brady. He said something in the game. I can't remember what it is now, but it was very inappropriate for an objective broadcaster
Well,
to
and he was
say.
warned by the league about it too, going in.
Well, but this was after that. He's during the game.
Yeah.
That I wish I could remember what exactly it was, but it was something along the lines of, "Dude, you can't do that." Like during the game, kind of tipping your hand uh, that you talked to him about the Raiders job. Like that. That really seemed to cross a line for me. But
Yeah, and I thought I mean, I thought he danced the line well enough on the
okay,
broadcast for the position he's in, but I hate that the league is dumb enough to allow this
right.
position to be a problem.
Yes.
And I thought he improved as a broadcaster as the season went along. But if he wants to go own and basically run a team,
Mm-hmm.
go do that because I want my Greg Olson back.
Yes.
As a
Oh,
side note.
yeah. No, he's the best. Yep, and clearly better than Brady. Clearly, just listen to him. And Greg Olson doesn't make everything about himself too.
Yeah,
Like
I think Brady got better. I think he's better than some long-standing guys, but I
yeah,
don't care enough
I'll
about
agree
that
with that.
right now to honestly go too far with it.
Okay, I'm sorry. I can easily get
No,
pulled into
it's just today's
that.
not the day for the announcers, my friend.
Right, right. Ben Johnson.
Um,
Wow, it happened.
so just it's a remarkable day because of the difference in what the Bears normally do, and I've been trying to tell everybody that'll listen, cousin Nate,
Cousin Nick,
cousin Nick,
cousin Nick. Thanks for listening.
anybody on the pod, that
Hmm.
it's not fair exactly to say same old Bears when the new president and company fired a guy mid-season. There
Yep.
are already differences, and now they went
Hmm.
out and almost in an unprecedented way aggressively hired Ben Johnson the second he was available.
Yeah, like
That's
literally.
not the same old Bears. Maybe it doesn't work. I don't know. I mean, these guys are all unproven until you get a chance to give them a couple years in the gig. But this is way more exciting than any of the other hires would be. I'm just thrilled that they actually did this. And I don't know, man, just if you really love football and you understand how plays stack and how formations work, and he gets all the love for all the trick plays and their creativity, and then everyone's mad about the Jamison Williams interception. It's like, no, no, man, dance with the one that brought you. It's okay if a couple trick plays don't work when the other 10 do.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that's amazing about him is how he stacks the plays to fool the defense. It's so cerebral. People are open in that offense all the time.
Yep.
Jared Goff was a castaway by the other boy wonder offensive genius, Sean McVay, who I
Mm-hmm.
would also be thrilled to have as coach,
Oh, sure.
right? This guy, Ben Johnson, is you're hoping the next Sean McVay. It does work with offensive wonderkids sometimes.
Great.
Not always,
Not always.
but
Not always.
these guys have to start somewhere. And this is a great thing too because they didn't settle for a floor raiser, which is what McCarthy would have been.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They swung for the fences.
Yeah.
Caleb Williams' draft was swinging for the fences. Only thing I wish we could change is I wish we'd have just done this last year. But
Right. Didn't waste a year of it. Yeah. But we've got 3 years of data on Ben Johnson to show how good he is at this. Unlike Matt Nagy, who we
oh,
had
I'm
what
so glad you brought that up.
5 or 6 games, yeah, at the time I liked Matt Nagy as the hire. It made
I
sense.
did too. It was the other year that they've ever hired a guy that I actually liked.
And it made sense. But this makes so much more sense, and there's so much more um, data behind showing that this really, really has a good shot of working because of his past success on a continual basis. Arguably with weaker quarterback talent. Now, the rest of the roster does need work. I don't think the Bears are going to be built enough to score 30 whatever points a game yet until that offensive line gets fixed. But it's the absolute right first step in getting to that place.
Yeah, I mean, they, let's do Nagy a little bit more because I think
Okay?
that's a really important point. Nagy, they didn't hire the guy standing next to the greatness, whether that's Aaron Rodgers and Luke Getzey,
Mm-hmm.
or whether that's Matt Nagy and Andy Reid.
Mm.
They hired the guy running the show on
Great
that
point.
side of the ball
Great
for
point.
3 years, not 5 or 6 games where you're not even sure quite, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a really important point to me.
Difference, yeah.
I mean, that's crucially different, and the experience level is just way different. And the thing that really worried me about Nagy, once, even though I was for it, is I think it was like after the first year, because they had a good first year, of course.
Yeah,
But he
first,
said, no, no, I don't really worry about the mechanics of the quarterback. I'm like, what?
what?
Thought we
Excuse
hired
me?
you to work with Mitch and fix this stuff. I'll be very disappointed if Ben Johnson doesn't immediately go, Caleb, we're going to pair your footwork with the timing of these routes. I don't know what in the world they were doing with you last year. I've never heard of an offense not worrying about the quarterback's footwork, but believe
Mm-hmm.
me, this one's going to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So here you go. Last time the Bears won a Super Bowl, the coach was hired on January 20th.
Oh my goodness, my friend, it's a sign.
Mike Martz, best I've ever seen. They're very, very fortunate. They got it right for the first time with Caleb.
Wow.
That's
High
his
praise
thoughts on Ben Johnson.
from Mike March. Wow.
On the
Very
not so
good.
good news, who got Ben Johnson interested in coaching when he was a backup QB at North Carolina? John Shoop, his college OC.
Whoa, no.
However,
That's
did
okay.
John Shoop ever have a QB? Did he ever have Cutler?
No, no, no. He was gone before that. In 2001. He had Jim Miller, who had a decent year, but
Yeah,
was
one of the best years ever for a Bears QB.
yeah.
And then it
Mm-hmm.
all fell apart. And then wasn't he working with like Hutchison and those guys? So I don't know if
Yeah,
John Shoop got a fair shake. That was still the era where the Bears QB was the biggest problem.
yeah.
But the league seems to be full of these guys who played at smaller schools who become great head coaches or who were backup QBs.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got to have the mind when you don't have all the physical traits. It's the same thing with like Michael Jordan, terrible coach, will never do it. It's like
Right.
not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just it's not surprising the background there. It's just so much to like. I don't even hardly know where to go from here beyond just that this guy's offenses kick butt and routinely scheme guys wide open, and we never get to say that.
Nope, we do not. Can I tell you something that my that our listener Wheaton Buddy Brian sent me?
Yeah,
Wheaton Buddy
sure.
Brian. He said we have Jaden Daniels to thank for this, right? Because they knocked out the Lions. He said,
I
if
know.
so, give that man Rookie of the Year.
I mean, we could get into the weekend that was at some point, but this is such a
Let's save
coach
it for
day.
next time. Yeah.
I hate that the national narrative makes me want to root against him
I know. I agree.
because he seems so likable otherwise. But yes,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for. So my kid Avery that always watches the football is like, "Who we rooting for?" And I'm like, "Well, it's complicated."
Yes, yes.
And my wife's like, "Oh, here we go." So I outlined, the national narrative has us wanting the Commanders season to end, and we're sick of it, Caleb versus Jaden comps, and yet if the Lions lost, we might get the head coach that I most want sooner, and in the pain of what was a pretty painful couple weeks trying to keep up with the news, if we're honest. They're nothing like the trade Fields or trade the pick thing last
Right.
year. And she's like, I'm rooting for the Commanders because getting a better head coach seems more important.
Wow.
I'm like, that's a good answer.
That is. You
That's where
have
she
done
landed.
well. Yes. Yeah.
Well, we can record later in the week to talk
Yeah.
playoffs
Yeah. That
again
sounds.
and get
Yeah.
get a conference champ fix. Um, but I just again, this is a very intelligent person that they have hired.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He might be chock full of coaching cliches, but I'm pretty sure he's not going to be a bumbling idiot behind the mic. And intelligent people figure things out,
Mm-hmm.
and he shouldn't be the kind that just panics. I will really be stunned if he shares any of those kind of traits with the last head coach. It may not work because they may never get the O line right. And some of those trick plays absolutely cannot happen if your O line can't hold up for a little
Right.
longer than normal. So this is not a finished product or anything like
No,
that,
that's
but
important.
this is an
Yes.
exciting hire,
Yes. And
and I cannot wait to hear what he says.
I would expect Johnson to be pointing out to the GM, hey, we got to fix this O line. If you want me to get the most out of Caleb, we've got to invest more. So I mean, I don't expect him to let that go to the wayside. So, but yeah, it will take a while to fix the O line and get things cooking that way. Let me ask you this: how much credit goes to Ryan Poles, do you think, and how much goes to
Probably a
Kevin
good bit
Warren?
of it.
Okay.
So I credit Warren in some ways because this stuff does feel different. We've talked about it
Mm-hmm.
already.
Mm-hmm.
But Poles and Johnson have the Boston College background. They weren't, I don't think they're together, but it's like a bullet point
Okay.
on the resumes, you know what I mean? So I feel like they might have bonded, you know what I mean, over
Mm-hmm.
that.
Okay. Just curious what you think.
So I think there's no, I mean, they're all going to be patting themselves on the back, and I'm sure
Yeah.
both of them can't wait to tell you all about how good they work together and how they both made the decision together and all this. But I really am curious, and I'm glad you asked too. Let's see how much different the body language looks this time, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I bet there's a little bit more strutting going on than the last couple times, especially the one after Eberflus was fired.
Got a couple good tweets here. Adam Johns,
Yeah, same.
the Bears are hiring Ben Johnson. They went for the big swing instead of the retread head coach.
And I don't
Thank
know
you.
if he is framing it that way quite what I want to hear. Cousin Nate and I already talked about this one. He didn't like how that was framed, and I see what he's saying, but I think he might mean thank goodness they went for the home run, not the retread. I'll be curious to see what John says on the pod.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think it's just as simple as yeah, the fact that this is the hot young coordinator that you want to pair with the QB instead of like Mike McCarthy. This would have been his third team. Not a great track record for getting to the Super Bowl or winning a Super Bowl with your third team as a head coach. In fact, I don't know if that's ever
Yep, I got a
happened.
couple fun ones from Jaquan Brisker in
Oh
case you're worried
yes.
about how the defense responds. Boom. And then another one. This is the turning point. New times, let's get it. He clearly was ready for something different, and some of these
Yes.
D guys wanted an O coach. We talked about that like a month ago.
Didn't Jalen Johnson name
Jalen said
Ben
it too.
Johnson by name? Didn't he name him
Yeah.
by name?
Well,
Yeah.
I think they might have asked him about him specifically, and he basically talked about how I think his answer as a paraphrase was like, I know we can lock our business down. Let's get better on offense. You see all these teams that have these great head coaches from there, kind of an answer. But I'd have to go back and
Oh,
look and listen again. How about this from Kalen Kaler, who had that amazing piece
oh gosh,
on the
yes.
agent influence? It was also nice to see that didn't happen
Hmm.
where the whole Trace Armstrong thing. But anyway, one thing I know is Ben Johnson is intense. See, I told you. Lions O-line Dan Skipper, the guy who checks in all the time as the sixth lineman, famous for the Cowboys game, that Dan Skipper, told me that he is so sure to maintain a 5 yard bubble around Johnson at all times during games because you're bound to get dog cussed like nothing you've ever been before.
Whoa.
Whatever that means. He's a bear? Does George know this? Continues the quote. He's one of the most intense people you'll ever meet, and he doesn't put off like that, but he's incredibly intense and like, don't get in his way. I
Beautiful.
like that. They need this.
Yes, they do.
I don't
They
care if he
want
swears
it.
or not, but I care that he doesn't take prisoners. I care that he's not there to make friends and be buddy buddy and pass out dorky nicknames as if that's leadership. Give me a break.
The players want this. They've been screaming for it since the beginning of last season. Yeah. Dan Pompey, cousin Nate sent us this one, but this is a good one too.
Punching bag Dan Pompey, the Hall of
Dan,
Famer who has some of the dumbest takes ever, but this is a good one.
this is a good one. What can the Bears expect from Ben Johnson? Some things stand out from my time around him and the Lions. He's low on ego, but big on analytics. He thinks creatively and will emphasize the run game and protections. Johnson will have a vision for what he wants to do with Caleb. Oh, baby. That's my love language right there.
Yes, it is. And I hope it also means new center and two new guards.
There's got to be big
I
changes,
mean,
yeah.
no offense to Tevin Jenkins. I'd keep him on the team friendly deal, but the injuries are just such a problem. He's such a fun player when he's out there. He's just misses way too many snaps.
Yeah. Hmm.
I also think you could go running back early in the draft with Ben Johnson around, and I wouldn't flip out. Because last time the team that he was with did that, the guy was pretty darn good.
Worked out pretty well. Yep.
That's, of course, assuming you've signed a couple linemen in free agency, though, to be clear. But if we're gonna love this hire, we gotta let him zig while everybody else zags.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to give it. They finally have somebody I really trust. You know, like I'm not gonna be mad if Ben Johnson's like, no, this was the running back I wanted. We traded down a few spots and picked him. I'll be like, well, shoot, you know what you're doing. I forget we have someone who knows what he's doing now.
Hmm. Yep.
That's at least how I'm gonna attempt to approach it.
Uh, Jarrett
Oh
Payton,
man, I was so
son of.
excited. My throat hurts. I was so hollering so much.
Me too.
All my kids were like, "What, Daddy?" Because I never get very excited about much of anything, but this was great news.
Jarrett Payton, son of the great sweetness, said on Twitter, I love the Ben Johnson hire. And if he brings Dennis Allen with him, that would be great too. Allen is a guy who can hold down the defense. Now it's time to start investing in both the offensive and defensive lines.
Yeah. So there's another pod in there, of course, when we get to the off season
Yep.
next stages. But the needs, if you're trying to give Ben Johnson what he needs to be to take down the Lions and emulate all that and those kind of things, obviously O line. Your pass catchers are pretty close. You probably need a burner though. I think you still need a speed guy.
Isn't that supposed to be Rome, or is he not?
I think he's more of a jump ball possession guy, body type
Okay.
wise too. But
Yeah,
those
we,
don't
we
grow
did
on
see some of
trees,
that.
so I don't know.
Yeah.
And I do think running back's a need. I think both lines are obviously the biggest need. I think
Yeah.
backup tight end is a pretty huge need.
Yes.
I don't know
Hmm.
how much he uses the backup tight end though. Um,
Well,
but
yeah.
this is there's
That
plenty of time for all this, and now there see like there's just no way he takes this job if he doesn't get some say in some of that.
exactly.
He was way
Exactly.
too sought after, so this should point
Hmm.
to really happy changes in the structure they're acting like a big boy organization. I just can't say that stuff enough.
Hmm.
They didn't let Tom Brady and the Raiders go outbid them. They didn't even give this thing a chance to get there.
Yeah. Neither did Ben Johnson.
Yeah, I mean,
You know.
the Caleb factor.
Uh-huh. That's
Okay,
real.
because I know we're gonna do the games later in the week, but the takeaway, there's one huge takeaway from the weekend for me that definitely relates to this, and that's if you have, even if you have a QB had a really good year, if he's not a dude you can just absolutely count on by these rounds, these deep rounds in the playoffs, he's not the dude. Like Jared Goff had a great year, but when push came to shove, his physical limitations got him beat.
Three
It's a
picks,
big part of
right?
that
Yep.
loss. Of course,
Hmm.
so is their defense missing like all their starters. So let's
Yeah,
be fair.
yeah, gotta
And I think
gotta
he
keep
did
that
an
in mind
amazing
too.
job with the Lions the last few years, Ben Johnson and Goff both.
Hmm.
But if I was Ben Johnson, I'd be like, I'm not going where I'm starting over at QB with a tank
Oh,
season and then
right,
draft one next year when I can go
right.
where there's at least an elite talent that I can help mold.
Hmm.
And you could have said that was Trevor or Caleb, but it sure wasn't the Raiders.
No, no, it wasn't. And
So I don't know. That was one of my takeaways from the weekend.
yeah, that's good insight.
The
Huh.
teams that won all won the turnover battle, lost the yardage battle, and won because their QBs and their situational football was better that day.
Yeah. Hmm.
Except for maybe the Eagles. I don't know that you'd say he outplayed Stafford really.
Yeah, true.
But that game was so weather impaired that it's hard to really say.
And Lamar,
Because also they dropped a 40-yard touchdown that would have changed Hurts' numbers and they would have looked pretty similar to
right? Yes.
Stafford's.
Hmm. And Lamar almost, he had a couple big mistakes, but almost pulled him back. If oh, who was the tight end who dropped the ball for Baltimore for the 2 point conversion? You know who I'm talking about, but the ball was right there.
Oh, yeah, Mark Andrews.
Mark Andrews, thank you. Yeah.
Shout out to Buddy Brian for all of
Buddy
our Mark
Bryant.
Andrews comedy this season. We had him on fantasy. We dropped him. We picked him back up. He was good. It just went all over the place. And I was joking about how the only other people that could relate to the Mark Andrews roller coaster like Ravens fans were he and I.
Hmm.
But man, what a great player to have such a dreadful fourth quarter. Shoosh.
Yeah. Oh man. I think Buffalo still wins that game. They were just clicking, but yeah, that drop obviously hurt.
Anyway, it's so hard not to want to talk about these games
I know, I know.
too.
Yeah, we'll get to it. We'll get to it.
We'll get there.
Yeah. Hmm. Any other last thoughts here for right now that you got? You got to get
Just
out.
really excited to hear from him. Really excited to see where how the staff comes together. Um, and just I guess I go to the division real quick. Dan Campbell, wonderful guy, great head coach. We all laughed at the bite the knees. Great head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Players love him. He's up there tearful about the way they went through all the adversity. I mean, they had a great year. I feel bad for him.
I do too.
Lions fans a little bit. Some of them are kind of obnoxious, but mostly they've been through an even worse time than us
Mm-hmm.
overall. And man, I what does he look like without his two strategists? They're both getting jobs,
Probably.
right? Aaron Glenn's probably the Jets or Saints, and Ben's already a Bear, buddy.
That's right.
I don't know that they're a 15-2 team next year. I don't know what the Vikings are under JJ McCarthy. I know Kevin O'Connell's a good coach. He's also lost in the playoffs every time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know LaFleur's a good coach. And I am not at all sold on Jordan Love, which I
Nope.
think is another one of these roller coaster young players with a lot of talent. But I see a lot of back foot throws and weird.
Mm-hmm.
They just get a lot of garbage bailout, not just calls, but like, how did they complete that pass? He underthrew it by 5 yards kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The division's ripe for the picking, and it's possible that the Bears have the best QB coach combo this time next year. You could possibly say that with a straight face. That's on the table now. It's not on the
Yeah.
table if you hired Brian Flores.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they have swung for the potential. I'm not saying it's certain at
Mm-hmm.
all,
Mm-hmm.
but if it goes really well, we could legitimately be sitting here this time next year and being like, dang, we are on the rise. That was a tough loss. You know, like we could have made the playoffs. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they're going to do next year, but I know that they have massive potential with this pairing. And as good as the division was, they just went 0-3 in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And this league is so hard to figure out any given year.
Mm-hmm.
the Commanders legitimately earned the number 2 pick. They had the worst defense in the league, and they're 1 win away from the Super Bowl in one off season.
One
Again, I can't
year.
help but keep going back to the lessons of the week. I'm sorry. There's no reason the 5-win Bears can't improve to 10 in
Hmm.
year one with a good staff around him. And if Caleb's improving, there'll be more.
Hmm.
They didn't settle for the floor. This is awesome.
Yeah, could not agree more. Great day. Great day for the Bears.
And I'm sorry, Raiders fans, your division long term is way harder to come into.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, why would he go into a division with Justin Herbert and Bo Nix looks all right as a rookie? Of course, Mahomes. And you're going in with no quarterback with an overbearing owner
Against Reed, Sean Payton, and Harbaugh?
right,
Those are set
right.
up for long-term success more than I think than the NFC North teams to a
Mm.
certain extent.
Hmm.
Packers are always there. I could see the Lions maintaining. I could see them falling off a cliff, and the Vikings are about to transition their quarterback and lose their DC maybe. I mean, I feel like long term there's more out in the AFC West that's tough to win. And then you got to go through the rest of the AFC QB gauntlet.
Yeah.
So I think the only way he was the Raider is if the money blew him out of the water. And I love that the
Hmm.
Bears didn't even let it get to that point.
Yeah. And again, he clearly wanted to come to the Bears.
Can't wait for them to treat his contract like a nuclear secret. But I'm sure it's heavy.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
it'll get out. The coaches we do eventually learn, right? Because don't we know John Harbaugh got 18 or 16 a year or whatever, or Jim Harbaugh.
I
And I was
have
like,
no
oh, they weren't
idea.
paying that. Hey, Bears might be killing the cheap narrative too, which I've been trying to tell everybody for
They haven't been
five
cheap for
years.
a long time. Yeah. Hmm. It's a tired, lazy old
Just
argument.
dumb.
I mean, Hallis was cheap. They do know there is knowledge of that, but I mean, at least since the late '90s, early 2000s, they have not been a cheap organization.
Diana Rossini, who's been tweeting a lot about all of this the last week. Ben Johnson picked the Bears because of the quarterback. It's that simple.
Yes, of course. People didn't want to hear that earlier, or at least the media that was trying to push him to I almost said Oakland, to Vegas, to the Raiders. Maybe because of the Tom Brady effect. Like, oh, of course he'll want to go work with Tom Brady. Oh, great Tom Brady. Oh yeah, what a
I
great.
mean, they act like working with Tom Brady means you get to coach Tom Brady. That always killed me.
Hmm.
I mean, he might be an amazing owner. Tom Brady has been successful, of course, to an absurd degree at many other endeavors. But it's not, it's no more a given than any of the other variables in this whole thing. What if
Like,
Tom Brady's not around and he gets bored by the whole thing?
yep.
How much is coffee Monday morning with Tom Brady really worth to a head coach? He's a 5% owner. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, yeah,
Right.
but what really is his role?
Yep.
Advisor? Is he really in charge? Because Davis is like, I can't do this. We all know this. You do this. Well, that's a little different. But clearly Ben Johnson didn't prefer that, so
Nope.
here we are.
You know who else was a bad owner? Michael Jordan. All
Yeah.
right. Our Zoom is about to die here. Should I wrap it up?
Yeah, I feel like there's so much more to be said, but we'll know more after the press conference. We shall return to this Friday and do some playoff stuff.
Sounds good.
It'll probably have to be afternoon, but we'll set it up,
Okay.
figure it out.
Thanks everyone for listening. Stay tuned. We'll have more Bears stuff and NFL stuff later this week. Talk to you later. Bear down.
Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the
Everybody
procedure,
stay calm.
everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm.
Wait.
Everybody calm down.
The Bears.
I find I'm so excited I can barely sit still or hold a thought in my head.
My Chicago Bears.
I love the Bears.